Hey everyone, just before this begins, I would just like to announce that all of this is streamed right here on my YouTube channel every Wednesday at 3 p.m. EST. Catch you there. And also, this is my first time ever doing a voiceover, so some feedback in the comments would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. The first thing I do here is hollow out a hole, and I gather materials to make a lush area in this hole that I've created. To do this, I used crimson grass seeds, hallowed shard walls, all 4 strange plant varieties, and rich mahogany leaf wand. The hallowed shard walls provide a nice leafy background texture, and the strange plants mixed with the rich mahogany leaf wand provide a nice foreground texture. And then I like to sprinkle in some brown painted bamboo fence in order to make that sticky, just add a little bit more detail. Next up, I start working on this little waterfall thing. To do this, I used my stone mix, which is typically coral stone, titan stone, stone block, gray brick, crimstone brick, and ebonstone brick, along with craggy stone wall in the background. All of the blocks are painted gray, besides titanstone, which is painted white, and then actuated to make it blend in perfectly with the background wall, to just give it a little bit more texture. And you can see there that I wanted to make like a little waterfall thing. However, the issue is that you can't place water on actuated blocks, it'll just fall through. So I re-actuated a little area, and then I painted it black, and then I placed the water inside that. Just a little cut for the water, but also to sell that waterfall look coming out of the rock. Next up, I sketch out a tree that I want to make, including the trunk, and then the rough idea of where the branches are going to be. Then I fill in the branches with the hallowed shard wall to just get an idea of where I want to put the leaves. Then I start hammering, just a little bit, put a little bit more detail in. And here's the longest part of the tree, is to detail it. The way that I detail trees is to take rich mahogany leaf wand and then place strange plants on top of those blocks to create that really thick, lush vibe. Now, here, if you wanted to spice it up, you could incorporate blueberries. However, to keep in mind with blueberries is that you have to make sure there is an open background wall behind it, or the absence of background wall, I should say. And you may notice here that I am carving through the branches a lot, and that's because if you think like an actual tree, you don't see a whole branch of the whole tree, right? So I'm trying to break it up as much as I can to give it that really authentic, natural look. Another thing you could do to spice it up is to put some hallowed prism wall in the background with the hallowed shard wall in the darker areas of the tree, just to give it a little bit more depth. And as you just saw, I am making some vines, and to make these vines, I used a string of strange plants, along with hallowed shard wall and some vine rope. Little tip about strange plants is you can only place them in a 1x2 area, but you can put a block on the upper space that it takes for some reason. Strange plants are really weird, and as far as I know, the only block that does this. I also incorporate pink streamers into my vines, because I like how they look when placed horizontally to each other. It makes that, like, hanging vine kind of idea. Alright, next up here, I start actuating some of the branches to really start working on that 3D effect, which I use the green paint for as well, where I shape where I have done my actuation to give a depth effect on the leaves. And then I go back through with teal paint as well to further sell the effect in the even darker areas. And then on the trunk here, I make a 3D effect by shading the inside of the trunk, and then I randomly hammer to make spaces for walls, and then I fill the light side with hallowed shard wall, the dark side with corrupt tendril wall, and then the middle with hallowed prism wall as a transition between the two. Here I'm just adding a little bit more detail on the lush part in the ground. Here I build a little lantern. Not really sure what I was doing with this. I think I just thought it would look cool, and so I did it. And that's how I feel like you should do with your building, right? Just do things you want to do, or things that you would think would look cool. No one is telling you what you can and cannot do. And if anyone is, they're a loser. And here's where I start working on the actual lab portion. I placed a floor of tin plating that I swore myself I'm going to go back and fix, and then I never do. So just ignore that, I guess. And then below it I placed a layer of ash wood wall. Here I start decorating with some adamantite beam, iron crates, and silly balloons of pink and green variety. Excuse me. I like the pink and green variety because they have a nice contrast to each other, and the purple one I think just looks a little weird with the gray paint. And some of you may have noticed that I put a logic gate down there as well, and then actuated it to that adamantite beam just to make a little, like, fancy industrial door. Man, that is a sentence. There I start using hanging pots as well as some brass platforms to just add a little bit more detail in that area, as well as a booster track. And even using a beetle banner. It's the red beetle that you find underground. I'm not going to try and pronounce the name because I will butcher it completely. I just added a little smokestack using palladium columns in a 2x3 area, and then putting a chimney on top. I just think it looks cool. Here I'm fiddling around with a little bit more detail with the pink streamers and the meteorite lantern and some rails. I'm doing some measuring because I want to make sure that I build the main centerpiece in the center. The ruler is very, very handy for this kind of situation. However, you want to be careful with the ruler because for some reason it will extend one block further out on the left side than it will on the right side. So just be cautious of that. And then for this middle area here, with the main canister that's going to have like a plant thing breaking out of it, for the bottom I did some ashwood chairs, rails, and brass platforms, along with some other furniture like demon torches and I believe marble lanterns. Not lanterns, sorry, candles. As well as another candle that I do not recognize. I apologize, but I don't know what I used. Up top here, I'm just doing some like hanging wire designs with the hanging pot, some rail, and brass platforms. And then some other designings with the silly balloons, adamantite beams, and palladium columns. I like the adamantite beams in a 2x2 area because they make that box shape, and I think that's just really handy when making kind of industrial styles. And there I put some booster tracks just to add a little bit more to the sci-fi aspect, and then some granite lanterns on top as well. Some more hanging pots here, just add some more hanging wires, because I just like how they look. Here I start fiddling around with like trying to make some cracks in the canister, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. So it is probably very hard to watch. So I will be experimenting here for a little while, just trying to figure out how exactly I want to do it. I do eventually get there, and that's a lot of what building is, I believe. There you just saw me try to use a command, thinking I was on a server. We're just going to ignore that, because I did not do that, definitely. No one saw that. But I think the important part of building is to be willing to try new things. Because if you aren't willing to, like, let's say you're really good at making castles, right? If you never try to build, like, a lab like this, then you're never going to get better, because you're not challenging yourself to learn. As long as you are actively challenging yourself to learn, then you will continue to get better, no matter what. And that's how I started. Whenever I first started building, I just joined a free build server, and I just started talking to people. I was like, man, y'all build so good, like, how do you do it? And then they would just be like, oh, you could try this. This is what I like to do. You may like to do it as well. Now, some tips, they don't really fit my style, and that's okay. Everyone has their own styles, and you need to find the one that's unique to you. But also, everyone has something that they can offer. Even the newest of builders can teach you something that you may not know yet. And I think that's really cool. While I was ranting there, I was just started working on the side wall of the lab there. On this inside part, I used some rails and then a hanging pot up top. And then did some cog, palladium column, iron crate, and an anime-type beam on the actual wall part. And then some silly balloons acting as pipes going from one iron crate to another. Here I start working on like a little smokestack thing, but I wasn't really sure what it was going to be yet. So currently I'm just kind of like throwing stuff down and hoping that something sticks. So I was just experimenting. And I think it turned out pretty good. I ended up using a steam pump boiler to make like an industrial part. Saw a jump cut there. That was the mark of one stream and the start of another. And here I completely lost the plot of what I was doing previous stream, and I start working on the plant thing that I want to be breaking out of this test tube. I'm sketching out like where I want to put the plants, but I just like end up changing my mind about it completely. And I think that is another thing that is really important to learn when building, is to not be afraid to just like tear something down if you don't like it. And that's why another thing that I did whenever I first started building was build when I was tired. Because when I was tired, I was more willing to just completely rip something out if I didn't like it. Now, I'm not saying this is the best for everyone. Everyone has their own ways that they learn or that they push themselves. I'm just simply stating what works for me. And here I start working on the ceiling with the standard block mix of the tin plating, anime-type beam, iron crates, silly balloons. And then I incorporate some green gem spark in there just to add that extra sci-fi feel with the booster tracks pointing into them. Working on this centerpiece here, I did some pink streamers in the middle there to have that wire feeling, just to add a little bit more to the tech theme. And here, I start working on some different patterns I can do hanging down from the ceiling, because I want to have like a hanging wire feel to make that abandoned sci-fi theme, because that's what the ultimate theme I was going for here was. I think it came out pretty okay. And here going down, I use some iron. I put an iron crate on top of some hammered blocks, and I just discovered that, but apparently it makes the iron crate completely flush with the blocks as compared to other times when it's like you can see a line between it. And I think that's really interesting, and it's something that I will keep note of for the future. And then I make a cool looking door, or at least I think it's cool, with some gem spark blocks, and then use the a logic sensor and some actuators to make it like a force field. And I start working on this little side room here. I didn't want it to just be the main lab because I thought that just looked a little weird. So I had a little bit of fun with this little side room here. I wanted to have like a communication room idea. So here I start working on it. And I discovered that if you hammer brass platforms on top of hammered blocks, it has that that little V part inside the hole created by the hammer blocks. And that's another thing I learned. And I found that was really cool. Here I'm just randomly placing rails and brass platforms just to like get that communications array style. I didn't really know how to do that, so I was just kind of like throwing stuff and hoping some stuff would stick. And eventually it did. So it's a viable strategy. I'm just saying. There I used a glorified extractator because I never used it before, and I was wondering how it would look. And here I ended up making like a tiny little baby smokestack with it. And a little tip about clouds is that you want to have partitions of an overall shape. So if I drew an oval, well, I should be able to draw an oval around those clouds. And then I want to put like lines through the oval to break up the oval. And then those shapes created afterwards are your clouds. Here I start putting furniture down, like meteorite and Martian stuff, just to try and really get that communications array style. Here I end up just putting some bamboo fence painted in gray, because bamboo fence is just all reliable for me at this point. If I need some kind of like stick idea, I just go straight to bamboo fence. And since I wanted the lab to have an overgrown feeling, one, because it's abandoned, and two, it was containing a plant monster thing, I wanted to put a tree on top of the lab. And I just do the same thing as I did before, in which I just placed all of my wood down, sketched a tree out, placed the Howlett shard wall, sketched the leaves, did the leaves, and then did all of my shading last. But I did do this under part first to be like hanging vines beneath the roots, because I wanted to start from inside the lab and work my way out. And then I start working on this area over here in this side room, because I got completely distracted, because I'm very intelligent. Where I made some bamboo fence and some hanging vines with the strange plants and Howlett shard walls, as well as the vine ropes. I don't think I put any pink streamers in there. But you'll see that I changed my mind a little bit about the bamboo, because I wanted to have some kind of other background wall for the actual lab. And since bamboo fence counts as a wall, you cannot have both, because it'll look really weird. There, I just sat there thinking for a second, which I do a lot. If you ever catch one of my streams, I will literally sit there for like 15 minutes just like dwelling on what I want to do next. And here I just decided to add a little bit more foliage hanging down. And here I actually start working on what's coming out of the canister, and this is what I mean when I completely change where I was going with it. So instead of just going into the ground or spiking up like I had it before, I wanted to have it kind of like going into the ground and then having that offshoot that does come out of the ground, which I created over on the right side, and I wanted to have it like reaching up towards the tree up top, like it's trying to connect. I just think that would be a really, really cool idea if it was like a hive mind kind of plant monster thing. And then I did some shading with the Corrupt Tendril, Howler Prism, and Howler Shard walls, respectively. Another thing you just saw me do there that I just now realized that I did was I went back and I replaced some of the rich mahogany wand wood blocks with the regular living wood blocks, just to add a little bit of texture and variety into the build. Here I actually work in a different order, where I sketch and then complete the trunk first. It doesn't really matter what order you go in, it's really up to you. Some people just like to get all of their ideas out first, which I do sometimes, especially if I'm just like laying in bed and I just suddenly have like a spurt of genius. I'll just like pull out my phone or something and then just like do a little sketch, and then I'll go to bed and I'll wake up tomorrow and then I'll finish it. Whenever you get those ideas, capitalize on them. Really put effort into them, and especially since if you really like that idea, the more effort you're willing to put into it, and the more effort you're willing to put into something, the more you will learn from the experience. I actually find myself to be rather indecisive here, which I find kind of funny, because I am just like tearing through the vines and then re-adding them, placing walls, breaking walls. And that's okay. Here I try an idea where I wanted to have like some really like drawn out leaves with the rich mahogany leaf wand, just to have it like seem more dramatic, I guess is the word I'm going for. It didn't really work out too well. I've been able to do it before, but I just wasn't able to pull it off here, so I kind of just like left a little tiny bit and then just moved on. And if I had to guess, it's because I made the tree more round than flat, like a lot of my other trees. So it would have just looked really weird if it was just a ball with spikes. Just doing a little bit more shading with the green paint like I did on the other tree. And then going back with some teal, just to add a little bit more spice to it. Here I sit around thinking for a while about what I wanted to add, and then my game froze, but it was fine. The stream didn't crash, luckily. Not yet, at least. And then here I just go back and add some background wall to the actual lab. I could have spent a lot more effort on this, looking back, but I was just lazy, to be frank. And I had been on this build for a little while, and I was kind of wanting to move on. So I just kind of rushed through this. For, like, improvements, I could probably do some actuated black painted walls. Or not walls, sorry, blocks. To make, like, some beams in the background. But other than that, there's not really much I could do without making it too noisy. And noise is pretty much like whenever you have like a bunch of different blocks in an area and it just like hurts your eyes to look at. You want to be careful about doing that, especially with this style, because I have a lot of blocks that I use. And there you have it. If you find that you enjoyed your time watching this video /tutorial /speedbuild / whatever the hell it is, then a comment of feedback would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching.